all had assets and they all had just end up going through.
I guess just to introduce myself, so I'm Ed Bradon. I work at an organisation called the Behavioural Insights Team. We were sort of early partners of Applied, so it's really nice. Back in 2014, I was with Kate Glazebrook in the office when Applied was a very, very new idea. So it's very exciting, as I was saying to Kiati before, to sort of see how it's grown. I'm going to try and talk a little bit today about, I guess, just our experiences in the organisation and what we've found. Our sort of motto, so we're a behavioural science research organisation that came out of number 10 Downing Street sort of 10 years ago. Our kind of motto is this test, learn, adapt idea. That's what we tell our clients, that you should experiment and try and improve. For us, the sort of AI changes, and particularly in recruitment in our internal side, has kind of brought that a lot closer to home. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that test, learn, adapt philosophy and how we've been trying to do our best to sort of use it on the AI front. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about, I guess, our view, very tentative on sort of what next and what we should sort of plan for in our organizations when it comes to recruitment, but also when it comes to work more generally. And again, with a strong caveat that I don't really know, so that'll be our sort of informed speculations, but very interested to get your kind of thoughts and questions and stories. So to start with, does anybody know what movie is this from? Independence Day. Yeah, that's a good early test for our audience participation. I think, many of us over the last year or so have had this kind of moment where we've realised that we've read a few newspaper headlines about these new technologies, and then whether it's interacting with it ourselves, whether it's marking some of the SIFT answers that Kiati was speaking about before, we've kind of realised that we may have a problem. There's something different going on. Can I have hands up people who've, and not everybody may have done, but for people who've had that sort of feeling or that experience in the last 12 months? Okay, most people, but not everybody. So I'll tell you the story at BIT of how we sort of realised that this was not just a kind of fun science experiment. This is something that's actually going to affect how we do our business and our daily lives. So we, like I think everybody in this room, we use Applied to do our SIFT questions and our hiring. And don't worry, I'm aware it's a bit far away at the back, so I'll try and read it out for you. So we have our most junior role is called an associate at BIT. So we try and hire lots of young or career-changing, smart people to come and do our research roles. So in March this year, which was not very much time after ChatGPT came out, we had a hiring round. And a new candidate, first of many, called ChatGPT, we decided was going to take part in our process. So we had four questions, and I'll show you a bit more on these in a second. But we had our ChatGPT candidate answer these four and stuck them straight into the system, and then we marked them with 68 human candidates and one ChatGPT candidate, and we didn't tell our markers anything about this as far as we knew. It was just a normal round, but with this candidate there in the background. And the obvious question is, well, how's it going to do? Any predictions on what percentile you would guess? Hands up for 25th. 50th, 75th, 90th, okay, 1 and 2, 95th. So this is, we'll come to the results in a second. I'm going to keep you in suspense. This is the four questions that we asked. And again, don't worry if you can't read them exactly, but there was one about a sort of technical question. So this is for a research role. We're sort of doing these experiments in the sort of public policy setting. One about how would you explain pros and cons of online versus field experiments to a colleague. Another about outcome measures in online experiments. Another about sort of missing data, which I don't know, any of you with a research background would know that's the bane of researchers' lives. And a final one, not a technical question, about one of your colleagues on a project is missing their deadlines. What are you going to do about that? How are you going to handle that difficult situation? So I'm going to ask you for hands up for which of these questions do you think ChatGPT, and this is GPT 3.5, I should be really clear on, this is early days, which one do you think they did best on? So hands up for number one, that's the online versus field experiment. For number 2, that's outcome measures in the online experiment. Yeah, a few people. The missing data problem, only one. And then our colleague who's missing the deadlines. What do we think there? Nobody. Okay, well, I've got a shocker for you, Ben. That's a great answer. So here are the scores. This is blind marked, nobody knowing. And before really anybody was knowing to look out for GPT answers. And we found actually almost the reverse of what you might expect. So it struggled on the sort of details of the online versus field experiment. But the thing it did best on was that final question. It did, I don't know if this is, sorry, I'm jumping around here. I don't know if it's just because we hadn't quite got used to a ChatGPT answer and less impressed by all the things it's able to come up with, or whether just our cohort, maybe of human candidates, this is not the area that they shine. But yeah, a really sort of surprising result, and not one that we would have expected. And again, 3.5. And so this is the answer to our quiz beforehand. So I think 1 or 2 people in the back said 90th percentile. So yeah, scored in the top 10% of our candidates. So 6th out of 69 candidates. And yeah, easily sort of above our interview cutoff. And obviously, yeah, when ChatGPT was expected to turn up for the interview, it was a no-show, so it didn't go any further. But I mean, this is a really shocking result for us. I don't think we would have ever predicted that it would be this strong, this quickly. Yeah, it's really sort of sent us scurrying to try and think about what does this mean, and how do we adapt immediately on recruitment, but then more generally in how we do our work. And we heard from Kiati a minute ago about just sort of some of how this has changed the overall profile in the months since. We broadly think that, as well as these individual scores, it's had a huge effect on our hiring funnel, the numbers we see. And again, earlier on, we were hearing some stories, I think actually from even more extreme examples of ourselves. But just sort of very, very sort of high level of abstractions is not real data, but sort of anecdotally, we used to see in our SIFT questions, I think, a profile that looked a little bit like this. So if you have 1 star on the left and 5 stars on the right, and how many of each we see. We used to see, and it used to be great when you were doing I've done a lot of applied sifting in my time, lots of these sort of low effort answers of things like, why do I have to do this question is the only thing, or just no answer at all. So that used to be a very quick 1 star. And then we broadly see this kind of bell curve, I suppose, of quite a lot of answers clustered around 3, and then a very few sort of about far right 5-star answer, which is massively helpful when you're sifting. That gives you a really good sort of pool to work from when you're doing your interviews. And everybody in this room would be kind of familiar. I think some of your curves will look slightly different, but that's what we saw. Now, I think we've got quite a different distribution, which looks something like this. There's a few differences. To start with, we're seeing way fewer of those low effort answers. The default, if you're going to do that low effort one, it's enough effort to copy paste the question into GPT and paste the answer in there. So the number of scores where without sort of accounting for suspected GPT answers where you can score 1 seems to be way lower. And then we've got loads more applications overall, and then loads more scoring in this kind of middle bucket of the sort of 2s and 3s, where actually GPT does a pretty good job, and using particularly our old sort of scoring rubrics, you can't really mark them down below that, where they tick a lot of boxes and they're better than a lot of answers we would have seen beforehand. And then we're also seeing, I think, like an increase at the top end, probably least increase at the very sort of 5-star end, where you think, yeah, this is real insight, and this is something I couldn't have come up with myself. Although actually even then, I think people using it intelligently are getting a bit of a bolster in their performance. That's a very different profile. And for us, if we think that actually of these X's of candidates on the right, like a good proportion of those, some of them are people just doing it themselves. Some of them are using these tools in a sort of intelligent way, and they're sort of not necessarily kind of cheating, but some of these are just a copy paste job, and we're really not learning anything about the candidate's own abilities. So this is a problem, essentially. So I don't think we've got the answer, and I don't think anybody's really got the answer. And again, Kelsey spoke about some of the changes that are coming through, which are hopefully going to sort of a bit more systematically give us some tools to fight back. But I'll just talk a bit about, I guess, some of what we're trying to do to deal with this and to adapt with it. And again, I think lots of you in this room have got other stories, and it's a great opportunity just to share things, because there's really no silver bullet. Our research as well, I've probably read this sort of similar papers. I mean, Kiati mentioned these automated tools. We're pretty suspicious of those. I think in general, we don't really believe that there's anything out there that works super well. So one of my teams in my sort of day-to-day job does the education side. So we do a lot of stuff with schools. There's been some bad examples in sort of education environments of teachers finding a tool which they think, oh yeah, this is the ChatGPT detector, applying it to all their students' things. Oh my God, half of people have used ChatGPT, but actually the tool is just sort of guessing and doesn't know, and it can be a very blunt tool. So we've tried not to do that. Instead, again, there's some sort of human recognizable giveaways that at least for a while we've found useful. And again, we've heard some of these used before, and there's others to watch out for. So one thing we've spotted is just over formality. So some questions just, and again, you can prompt this away, but using a very different register and a different way of speaking to what we'd have seen beforehand, and perhaps a giveaway. We had this at the back as well, but American or Canadian spellings and linguistic tics can be a giveaway as well. A lot of lists. So you'll all know, if you use ChatGPT, it loves to order things in well-structured and helpful lists, but more than a human does, and perhaps that's a giveaway. And maybe the kind of best indicator we've had is not anything you can see from an individual answer, but when you look at them in the round, and particularly when you're looking at them having done what Kiati said of putting the questions yourself into ChatGPT, often you see the same examples, the same phraseology as we heard. What was the phrase? A seamless transition being used over and over. So that again can be a giveaway, but it's not a dead to rights one. And I think even here, there are just some more obvious examples, and you've got to be careful with it. But yeah, the best it is an indicator. And so that helps on individual questions. But we've been trying to think as well, okay, look, that's not good enough really to just go back to business as usual. So, and yeah, don't worry, I'll sort of read some of this out. So we've been trying to make just really obvious adjustments in our overall hiring funnel as well of, well, what does it mean if we just can't put quite the same emphasis on the sifting questions to do the heavy lifting for us? What do we need to alter? So some of these changes that we've done, some of them we're sort of we're still grappling with. I think broadly we think interviews are needing to take a bigger sort of part in the process. We have had, I'm interested if anybody else has, some examples where we're pretty sure during a Skype interview, people using ChatGPT, say some suspicious sort of pauses, and then again, lots of lists and structuring. So in-person interviews, even better, particularly as these tools get better. I don't know if you've been following, but ChatGPT is going to have even better sort of voice recognition soon. So we're not that far away from a world in which you can have your phone open during the interview. You can prompt it to say that this is a practice interview we're doing. And then when the interviewer is speaking, just press the microphone button, stop when they finish, and just say, oh, can I have a moment to think about that? And just look at your phone, and it will give you an answer back very quickly. And yeah, very hard to sort of spot that. So in-person stuff, in-person tasks, I mean, these are hard and expensive to do. Historically, we've done a lot of things like sort of here are 50 slides or here are 20 slides. You would go and give a presentation to a client, sit on this laptop for a while and come up with this and choose the slides. Different tasks for different jobs. I guess from the general literature, the workplace tasks are pretty good and pretty predictive of on-the-job performance. So I think doing those in person is fantastic. We still think there are tools for the sort of sifting that can work. So phone screens are time consuming compared to an applied score, but having that kind of 10-minute phone screen interview back in the process as a step to mean that you're not having to take 300 people through to the first round interview can be a good part of it. And I mean, this is one we're experimenting with, but there are SIFT questions which don't lend themselves quite so naively to what ChatGPT and similar models are good at. So for us, we're very interested in nudges, so sort of small tweaks in the environment that change behaviour. So one of the questions we're trying to do at the moment is asking candidates go out and take a photo of a nudge in the real world near you and send it to us. So something which, again, I'm sure you could Google it and find something. And in fact, the image generation is getting good enough that this probably won't last as a tool for very much longer. But you can sort of engage in that arms race a little bit. Keelty mentioned those tools of kind of tagging and reviewing in the SIFT questions. We think, just pure text SIFT questions, particularly ones that when you do that GPT benchmark, it just comes back with a 5-star answer. I think those we need to be really, really careful with. And there are some offline tasks as well. Again, a classic one for us used to be go and write us a sort of 1-page briefing note for a minister on how you might apply behavioural science to this particular area. It's the kind of task which, GPT absolutely smashes. And particularly if you've got junior sort of candidates who don't have a lot of work experience, where that would be quite a hard thing to do. That gets very, very hard to sort of sift with. And this is the last thing I said. So we sort of had that blind example at the start of actually entering ChatGPT in as a blind candidate. And again, I think that Applied Platform's going to make this easier, but we think this is a really good just benchmark, like defense of knowing sort of how compromised some of these questions are, of just getting into a habit of each round having a sort of anonymous ChatGPT candidate going through. And I guess for this, I'd really sort of, I'll talk in a second a bit more about where things are going, but the difference between GPT-4 and GPT 3.5, and indeed in 6 months' time or 12 months' time, the difference between GPT-4 and GPT-5 or whatever it's going to be is really enormous. So when you're doing this, really important to use the cutting edge version of the model. It's sort of like comparing a sort of, a primary school child to a sort of well-educated teenager on a lot of questions. Like the gap in capabilities is huge, really. So when you're doing this validation and checking, really important, I think, to use cutting edge versions of the models, and really important to have at least somebody in your organization who's kind of up to date with the cutting edge stuff, because as I'll talk about in a second, your assumptions about, GPT always does this, or it's really bad at this kind of prompt. It's been a kind of game on AI Twitter for the last 3 years of, does anybody know who Gary Marcus is? Good. It's best that you don't. So Gary Marcus is a kind of contrarian sort of AI researcher whose shtick is, for many years, sort of a new model comes out and he's like, this model is terrible. It can't do it falls for this basic trick, or this. It's actually stupid because it doesn't get this simple question right. And a classic one for the image generation algorithms was, if you ask for a horse riding an astronaut, that's famously something that a lot of these models struggle with, because it just wants to give you an asteroid riding a horse. And so that's often taken as evidence that these aren't real. But anyway, Gary Marcus for the last 3 years has been saying, well, ChatGPT can't do this. It's obviously not intelligent. And then 2 months later, people have an example of it doing precisely the thing that he said that it couldn't do. So, any of this stuff, really having the cutting edge is super important. So I think, for us, that's helped. And we feel like a bit more comfortable with our sort of current sort of hiring funnel and sift with this, although again, it's hard to be sure. The last thing I want to talk about just before I sort of leave you is that this is sort of okay for mid 2023, but like the very hardest thing about this entire space, and this is a challenge for all of us in our organizations, is that it's not like this is AI and it's going to be staying the same, and we can now spend 3, 4, 5, 10 years adapting to it and coming up with a new process. We're very much dealing with a sort of moving target, and something which, again, particularly sort of stark if you've been following the space, is going very quickly. And I like, this is on the right, by the way, presumably everybody knows this is an AI generated image. These have just come out, but really fantastic stuff. And I think, some of the visual stuff is a great way to illustrate just how kind of crazy quickly this stuff is happening, which if it's just entered your consciousness, it's really quite hard to appreciate. So with apologies for those small pictures for those at the back, but this is what's been going on in image generation. It's been a very similar trajectory to text generation, because the underlying story, as I'll talk about in a minute, of compute and algorithms and transformers more recently has been the same. But in 2015, which is really not that long ago, if you could get a sort of red blob when you asked for a school bus, you would think this is fantastic. This is like a real cutting edge thing. Everybody's going to get super excited about it in the AI field. In 2020, these kind of like very, very dubious, but sort of slightly more realistic pictures were the absolute cutting edge, which, I mean, they obviously look terrible, and how can anybody be excited about that? But in 2020, when these things were coming out, this was sort of mind blowing. Just last year, we got these famous teddy bears, which were the DALL-E 2 generated image, which everybody loved, and everybody thought, wow, how could this be improved on? This is amazing. And just this week, they've announced DALL-E 3 coming to ChatGPT soon, and I've got a couple of my favorite ones. But this is an AI generated image now. My even more favorite one of these potatoes. But they look fantastic, and they're getting very, very clever at sort of not just kind of vaguely doing it, but actually really responding to your prompt. And that's the improvement from only a sort of handful of years. I mean, that's sort of 2020 to 2023, and we've seen something quite similar with text. So it's a really scary sort of rate of improvement. And if you thought, all right, okay, we've got a few years now to kind of get ready for the current state of technology, that's not quite how it is. And I guess just to sort of give a sense, I won't go through all the kind of technical bit too much, and I'm no real expert with it, but on lots of capabilities, just the advances are massive. This is a sort of a chart, and again, don't worry about the details, but of a benchmark called NMLU, which is a sort of language model understanding thing, which is ask really hard questions and then sees how many they get right. Does anybody know? For example, does anybody know why there's no planet where the asteroid belt is in the room? Well, I didn't either, but this is just one of the answer is resonance with Jupiter prevented material collecting together to form a planet. This is just one of the questions that GPT-4 kind of smashes, and it does it across all these different domains in ways that we didn't really think was going to be possible at all 3 years ago, 5 years ago, even sort of 1 or 2 years ago for this. And now it's got these incredible capabilities. What's the embryological origin of the hyoid bone? I don't know, but again, GPT does. So we'll talk in a second about sort of work and what it means more generally. But I think the most certain thing that we can all bank on is this sort of rate of improvement. So we've seen, this is a nice chart from Arbold and Data. This is just showing over time on a aggressive logarithmic scale how much compute is being used to train these models. You can sort of see this chart going up aggressively into the right. At the same time as the sort of amount of compute being used, the sort of cost for that compute is coming down. So my last audience question. Does anybody know who this guy is? NVIDIA, exactly. So this guy is called Jensen Huang, who's the tech founder everybody should have heard of because he's fantastic. He's kind of built NVIDIA up from the ground. So he's the guy that's churning out these millions of chips, which are what GPT-4 was trained on. They just got their latest one, which he's sort of holding there. He's a bit of a sort of rock star figure with his leather jacket. The latest one's called the H100. Again, I won't talk through his technical chart, but the grey in this is the A100, which is the chip that GPT-4 and lots of other things was trained on, which was cutting edge 2 years ago. The H100, of which they've produced 500,000 so far, and they've got another 1.5 million they're building this year, is between 3 and 30 times faster than the A100 was. And for less money, so that is kind of already baked in. And while those curves are going up, a huge portion of scientists now are working on getting the algorithms better. So the amount of compute it would take to train GPT-3 is now way, way less than it was even 2 years ago. And finally, this huge wave of money and investment is kind of crashing into the space as sort of products which deliver value and you can actually profit from hit the market. So not only is the compute getting cheaper and the algorithms getting better, so you need less compute, but the amount of money being spent training these models is also on a kind of crazy exponential curve. So whereas GPT-3 was trained for a few million and GPT-4, people think it was maybe $80 million worth of compute, people are expecting single models that cost $1 billion or $10 billion to be trained over the next couple of years. The big finding in all of this is that as you do more training and add more data, the capabilities improve. So we don't really know what those capabilities are and how it's going to interact, but it's an extremely safe bet that we are using the worst versions of all these products that we're ever going to use, and that they're going to get significantly better over the next few years. And yeah, any statement about the AI can't do this or they always do this is a bit of a sort of hostage fortune that we're making. So the last question, and again, this is the one I really don't have the answer to, is we've talked a bit about recruitment, which in many ways I think is the kind of vanguard of this challenge. And I think all of you in this room are going to be among the people in your organizations and actually in the economy who have most exposure and most understanding of, I think this is a real thing and really changing what it means to work. But yeah, it's going to have much wider implications, and on timescales we can't really predict. And I like this sort of quote that Sam Altman, who's the CEO of OpenAI, sort of references a lot, which was that if you'd asked somebody maybe 10 or 15 or 20 years ago, okay, look, computers are getting better, things are going to get automated in the economy, how's work going to change? The thing that they would have said was, okay, well, to start with, it's going to be sort of manual and blue collar work that is going to go, and that's going to be automated first. And then maybe after that, it'll be the white collar clerical jobs that go. But the real sort of final fortress and redoubt of the humans is going to be creativity. It's going to be decades or maybe never that an AI is going to be able to draw a picture or write a poem or do any of these things. And actually what we've seen is it's been exactly inverted. So you can have different debates about the artistic merits or lack of GPT generated poetry, but it's very, very competent at things which we'd never have thought. We seem to be in that middle phase now where a lot of white collar jobs and anything really interacting with a computer or with text. I was saying to Kiati before, my wife's a corporate lawyer and does a lot of stuff where it's just about interpreting and writing documents. So they're in for a quite spicy time, I think. And then at the same time, robotics has fallen behind, and so some of that blue collar sort of work is looking like it's going to take longer. So very, very hard to predict. Those have been the big experts. But I think, going back, I guess, to the title and what we're all trying to do in this room, this idea of we've just got to kind of keep an open mind, be quite aggressive about using the latest versions of these tools, tinkering with them, and just changing on the fly and not having too many assumptions or too many sort of old processes we cling to. I think that's about the best that we can do. And events like this where we can kind of share stories and interested in your kind of questions and examples after this has to be a huge part of it. So thank you very much for having me, and really, really keen to hear some of your experiences as well.
Thank you.